for the guys that came up. I had no idea that was going on, really.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Somebody in my office put that together along with Trish and the team. She'll pay for it. I want to thank Tricia and her team. There's not a team that I know in any company that can accomplish so much with so few people. And they just work constantly. One of the themes of my career has always been that I'm probably not the smartest guy in the room, and I'll never say that I am, but I'll never get outworked when I'm involved in any kind of project, and I think that's what the Chamber does. They just never get outworked. They accomplish so much. I've had a ton of fun. 16 years on the board is something that I didn't know, but I did add back and I said, you know, that's probably right. But I joined the Chamber in 1991, and I was in the 1992 leadership Delaware County class. So anybody who has the opportunity to do that, it only takes you 30 years or so, and then you get a lifetime achievement award. So it's a good place to start, it really is. But I'm humbled, and I have a great amount of gratitude for the award itself. Somebody mentioned that we started the firm in 1989, and that's true. And when I told some of the younger staff that my partner at the time, Tom Brinker, who is not with the firm anymore, we kept his name, but Tom and I met at Earl's Video in Springfield, which is about 100 yards from my office now. And when you tell that to young people, they question you and they look at you and they roll their eyes and they say Earl's Video. It's like, you know, what the hell is that? I was going to rent a movie, and he was coming out of the movie, renting a movie, and we knew each other for a couple of years, and we were both wanted to leave our jobs. And we met and we talked, and like back then you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have anything. My wife was home and wondering why it took 3 hours to rent a movie. She was worried. She was about to call the police or call an ambulance to find out what happened. But that was the beginning of the firm, and a few weeks later we got together and rented an office in Drexel Hill and started from there. I quit my job in 1986, I remember, and the worst day after you quit your job and you go into business, there was no venture capital and there was no private equity. The French word entrepreneur was never even used back then. You were either an employee or you were self-employed. That was the deal. And when you were self-employed, you really didn't have any resources. You were grabbing at whatever you could to build a business. And one of the things I remember back then, it was very tough to get clients and start fresh and pay bills, and business was so difficult. I remember typing a letter one day to somebody I had known, and I still have this letter from 1986. And it was so terrible that you didn't have, you had a self-correcting typewriter, but it never really corrected the letter, so you would white out. And I had brown paper, but I had white out. And this was a letter that I wrote to somebody telling them that I was in business for myself. And they actually responded to the letter and introduced me to a company that became a pretty significant client at the time, one of my first. And that company, my job was to get their books cleaned up so they could be sold. So my first client, my job was to get rid of the client. So it took me 3 years to clean their books up. And they were sold. It was a tough time back then. We did start with no employees. We had some sort of employees, whatever help we could get. Then around 1990, I hired Matt Mingy. And Matt was a partner of ours today, still today. Matt's been with the firm all that time, and when I interviewed Matt, he was a caddy master at Rolling Green, who had just graduated from St. Joe's. And in the interview, I asked him, I said, if I hire you, can I play golf at Rolling Green? And he said, yeah, anytime you want. And I said, welcome aboard. That was the interview. And he'll tell you. And then he said to me, I really know I could be an asset to your firm. And I said, well, how could you be an asset to my firm? It really wasn't the firm, it was a get-together. And he had no idea how to answer that question, but I did hire him anyway. And that's how it started. And back then, that's how you hired people. My second employee was Ann McPeak. And Ann, who's still with the firm today, and Ann is here today. I have 31 years, amazing. Yeah, amazing. She put up with me for 30 years. So Ann got hired. I remember specifically, you put an ad in the paper, and she responded to an ad. And we interviewed 2 people for that position. And Ann was my second choice, because the first person I called asked me, what company was this? What did I interview for? So I knew that she wasn't the person. So I called Ann to come back in, and somebody asked me one time, why did you hire Ann? And I said, because when I looked at her eyes, she looked like she really wanted that job and really needed that job. So I checked her references and hired Ann, and Ann is still with us today. It was later that I found out her reference was from the job she came from, which is the heating and air conditioning company that was owned by her dad. So her dad gave her. The growth of the firm has been nice to see, and I've really enjoyed myself, and I really do enjoy work, and I do have fun at work. The story about Michael's poor gift, I thought it was 10,000, but that's a true story. And we did funny things like that. Ann reminded me of a few of them today, and a few of the dumber things to do in life. Remember, had an aquarium in our office. We always thought it would be cool to have an aquarium when people came into your office for some reason. Well, the numbnuts that worked for me, including Michael, decided to buy piranha. And every week they would feed the piranha, and we would all sit around the aquarium and watch the piranha eat goldfish. That was our professional firm. When you have 2 piranha, one of the things happened is when you stop feeding piranha, if anybody's ever had them, what do you think they do? Well, one's going to eat the other one. So one day we came into the office and there was 1 piranha left in our tank. And thankfully that was the end of the aquarium for the office. So we'll have, Tony, you got a beautiful aquarium, but I know there's no piranha in yours. No piranhas. Right, no piranhas. And we had fun like that. And we still have fun today. It's tougher when there's so many people and times have changed and people have changed. Let's face it, you don't hire people by asking them if you can play golf anymore. You go through a whole process, it's different. But that's good. We've been able to evolve. We've grown slowly. We haven't done anything dramatic, but we've been able to really evolve and make it fun, and that's why people stay. We have very little turnover at our firm, and we're able to attract people still by concentrating on the culture. And one of the biggest aspects of our firm is their ability to give back to the community, and that's something that we've really developed over the years. It was 1984, I joined the Optimist Club of Rose Tree, which was a spin-off of the Optimist Club of Media. They were starting a second club, and I had no idea what the Optimist Club was, but the hell, if you're going to join a club, you join a club called the Optimist Club. It's got to be a bunch of happy, friendly people, and they were. And that was really my first foray into any kind of community service, and what we did was, we had Hot Dog Day at the Tyler Arboretum, and then we also used to stuff food baskets and take them to needy families for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that was something that I brought back to the firm, and that was one of our first community events, was we would feed families at the holidays. It doesn't sound like a big deal. I think we did 5 or 6 families. It was easy. I mean, we only had 7 or 8 people working at the firm at the time. But in one year, we got a letter back from the woman who we fed, and we brought her a Christmas basket. And the letter said, "Thank you so much for your basket. I was stunned by that. This would have been my last Christmas, by her choice, until I got your basket." And we supplied her, how many years? Cynthia, right? Yeah, Cynthia. And Cynthia was somebody who had just given up on life, had no friends, had no family, and I don't know how we found her, but she was the first person on our list every year at Christmas, and we still do it today. Now we're invited, so many people there, we do food drives that feed food banks, and so many activities at the firm, and we make them fun, and we try to get everybody involved. We almost try to make it mandatory that you're going to be a part of that. When I was 13, my father and his friends from Southwest Philly, West Catholic High School, marched into a CYO meeting in St. Francis, and they had a coup d'etat, which I never knew what that meant. They walked in, and 6 of them walked in and threw out the board of directors of the St. Francis CYO. And St. Francis at the time had a terrible program, a terrible CYO program. And he told me what caused that was one time I was in a football game and I was coming out and I had to take my helmet off and give it to the guy who was replacing me. Because the program had no money to buy helmets for people. So helmets didn't fit. They were just, that's all we had. My dad and his, I'll call them ass-kicking friends from from Southwest Philly all went in, threw out a board of directors, and stood in front of the people that were at the meeting and said, you have a choice. You can go with them or you can stay with us. Make your choice. And all those people in there stayed, and him and his group built probably one of the preeminent CYO programs in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, which still thrives today. I learned from him that giving back to the community in any way you can, even a small, very small role, is something that's very important, and that's what I try to instill in my worker, in my employees and my partners, and we are very, very active with that. It doesn't take a lot of work. It just takes a little bit of work from a lot of people, and that becomes a lot of work. And I really, if you're not involved in the community, there are some tremendous not-for-profit leaders in this room here. Meet them, find out what they need. They're all great people to work with. I also inspired that in my family as well. I have 3 children. I have a son who's smarter than all of us, who's living in Fort Lauderdale right now and loving the Florida life. He's been there for a long time. And I have 2 of my own children who are here. My daughter Elizabeth is an autistic support teacher at Upper Darby High School, dealing with some of the toughest cases of autism that you can find in the county, and always has a smile on her face, loves her work. Her husband is an emergency room nurse at Crozier and has been there all through the pandemic. Used to go to work looking like an astronaut. He was so wrapped up. Never complained about the work at Crozier. And given the atmosphere of what's going on there now, never talks about leaving, never talks about jumping ship. Loves the work at Crozier. My son is a police detective in Upper Darby Township, graduated from college and came to us and said, I'm going to the police academy. And I can remember when he was about 3 or 4 years old, him telling me that one day he was going to be a police officer. And he's in Upper Darby, one of the toughest areas in Delaware County, and never complains about the work. And his wife, Trish, who's the mother of my grandchild, she decided for some reason to join the nuts at the asylum of bring Simpson. Call that community service as well. But anybody that owns a business and anybody that's had some success in life knows that you don't work 9 to 5 and you don't work 5 days a week. Everybody in here knows that. My dad said to me one time, he said, boy, you got it lucky. You can set your own hours and you can work as much or as little as you want. I kind of looked at him and shook my head. I said, yeah, it's not quite the way it goes. So if you don't have a support team, and I mean a really strong support team at home, it doesn't work. The nights you come home at 10 o'clock and you're whooped, the weekends you go away, time you have to travel, the 7 days you have to work, no matter what. If you have somebody at home that supports that, and somebody that just doesn't break your chops because of it, I can remember coming home at night at 10 o'clock and having dinner warmed up and ready for me. If you don't have that, your success is going to be much more difficult than it is if you do have it. And luckily, I've had it. 40 years this year.
Woo!
He stays generally quiet and doesn't like the limelight and really questions things I do. I'm just going to give you a sign. I told her I was going to make a sign when I came up here. She said, please, I'm leaving you. I was kidding, but that's the most important part of my life and my success, is the way that I've been able to maintain that relationship for sure. So thanks everybody. Thanks for everybody to come out in the afternoon. I appreciate the testament of people who came up here. Tony, thank you so much. Tricia, she diluted the statement a little bit. When the presidency of the chamber became available, I called Trish 5:30 on a Friday night and I said, this is your chance. And she said, no way. And we didn't let up. We didn't let up. And I was told by people, get it done, stop messing around, and do what you're supposed to do. And we did. And because of that, this chamber took us where we had. So, thank you, everybody. I've certainly had a lifetime of achievement, and I've achieved a lifetime. But I feel like I've got another lifetime to live as well. I plan on doing it with a lot of fun.